I thought it would be useful just to talk about the pivot chart facilities in Access, because when we're working with pivot charts there are a lot of things you can do which come from what we call it, the native capability of Access to play with your data. Here is the pivot chart you may have seen if you were with some of the earlier videos. And when you open up a pivot chart in Access, you see this tab appears at the top here. And the pivot chart tools are the tools that will let you play with the data. And of course that all depends on how much data you've fed into the query. Do you see this query count all categories? This is the query that's being used to generate the chart for you. Well, I want to point you at the two things over here first. There are things called drop zones, and when we click the drop zones it brings up some extra goodies around the chart. And when you click on the field list, it brings up the list of all of the fields available to you in your data. Whoops, it's gone. Let's bring it back. The drop zones, first of all, this allows you to choose which of the data portions that you want to play with. For example, when we bring up the source name on the right hand side here, these are the data series, and we can choose to have only, for example, the pre-primary kindergarten teacher, and the one disappears, the other one is still there. And if we choose the other one, we can see the data for the other one, the senior citizen case. You have to watch your title won't change automatically for you, and the colours might be a little bit confusing if you're producing end work in colour coding of some kind, but it's useful to know that you can select out just the sources that you want. Equally, on this side, you can select out the, let's just put that away for the moment, this side you can select out the categories you want to show. For example, if you're only concerned with the organizational issues, there you are, 3 columns only, showing you process, strategy and benefit. The most common need is just to show everything. But I wanted to talk about these filter fields here, because this brings us face to face with some of the internal details of working with Access, which you might enjoy knowing about. So here we go. Over here we've got a list of all of the data fields actually available to us, and there's not much here that's useful to filter on. Look, we can't filter on source name, we've got the source choice over there. Denotate and category, what's that? These are internal things inside. The way to deal with this is to look at the query in a different way. And as soon as you right click on the top bar there, you see you can have not just a chart but a table. You may have seen the table view before. There's the table view. There's a datasheet view that shows you the raw data that we're playing with. And there's a SQL view. You can see the SQL code, if that's what we call it, which is generated for us by Access. But I want to talk to you about the design view. This is quite easily dealt with. And the design view shows you that we're actually combining information for this query from 4 of our tables. The categories table, the denotator table, the chunks table, and the sources table. Well, there's a lot of data in the sources table. Let's just make a bit of space here. This data may be useful to us in presenting just a selection of the results that we've come up with. But look at the features of this view. This is showing you the tables and the relationships between them. A category is to be found in many denotata. Going from this side is easier perhaps. The source, be it an interview or a journal article, text of some kind, is broken down into chunks. You know all about that. The chunks are given codings. We see the denotatum text when we're doing the coding, and we link to the category that we believe is being illustrated by or denoted by the denotatum. So this one-to-many, many-to-one and many-to-one is the basic structure that we're playing with here. The subsidiary fields that we're not using at the moment in this query, there's only 5 fields coming through in this query. What's much more interesting is these fields over here. Supposing, for example, the organization, we've got a lot of data from, let's say, 2 organizations, and we want to look at the one and then at the other. Let's double click, and by double clicking on the line in the table of fields, it comes into one of the columns. Let's say we also have a before group and an after group, or perhaps it's an international group and a domestic group. We have different types of sources. We have interviews, we have focus groups, whatever. We want to look at who's been doing the coding. We want to look at who did the capturing, and so on and so forth. I put 3 more in there. When we go back to the pivot chart view, and when we bring up the field list, now you see these 3 extra fields have now appeared. And if we want to filter by organization, for example, just drag and drop. And the organizations available to us, well, oddly in this very simple example, we still only have the kindergarten and the senior citizen. So if we do that, we get a very similar result to what we had before when we were choosing the source. But obviously you can have as many different organizations which are quite separate from the sources that you're using. To get rid of something like this, just drag it off to the right hand side there. The group, let's drag and drop the group. Same story, I think. We've only got one group, and they're all what I've called here RTW. It's actually 11 interviews altogether, but I'm only using 2 of them for the purpose of this illustration. There you are. You get the general idea. What you have learned is that there's a view of the query which is quite understandable. It's internal to access. There's other stuff up here, and frankly I've not paid hardly any attention to anything else in the query tools that you see here. And let me just warn you once again, please make a copy of what you have done. Don't mess about with this internal stuff without making sure you've got a backup, and you can always go back. All this stuff here I've never looked at before. What's a make table? These are special queries which create data tables wholesale. What is passed through? I have no idea. Go, play around, have fun. I hope that helps. Let's just look one more time back at the pivot chart, pivot table view, and we'll put all this stuff away. How about that? What do you think? Pivot tables are probably the least understood and least used features of Access, and you may have seen them in Excel. Have fun. Good luck.